Hey, I'm Cliff,
And I'm Susan.
and welcome to the Cliff and Susan podcast.
We are a married music duo right here in Little Rock, Arkansas. And our podcast is a way for you to kind of see behind the curtains in our musical career. We love to share our story, educate, entertain, inspire, and bring on guests like we have today to share their stories as well and chat about the music industry and life and inspiration and all of the things. I'd like to welcome on today. We've got Matt Wilson. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me
So
on this.
excited, so excited to have you today. And he's in Florida. We'll talk about that. But I wanted to just give everybody a brief bio on Matt because we've become friends kind of from afar. We were both in the music industry. He is the piano man, and I'll tell you a
Mm.
little bit about his story and his show, and a lot of similarities, I think, in his trajectory and mine as a singing piano
Yeah, for
entertainer.
sure. But not all only that, but also just how we grew up. We got a lot of things in common here.
We do, we do. So let me read his bio so y'all can kind of get a little intro into him, and then we're gonna jump into talking all things music, life, and everything. He's um so known for his dynamic performances, Matt gained national recognition as the piano man in the first national tour of Movin' Out, the Billy Joel and Twyla Tharp musical. His career includes performances at the 2000 Sydney Olympics and the Carolina Opry, with his contributions to the arts earning him recognition from the state or the Texas State Senate, which is super cool. Matt's roots in music come from church, which I love that because we'll talk about that
A
today.
lot of
My,
the
my,
same.
my mom is still the church piano player after 30 something years. But influenced by the sounds of gospel, rock and roll, and the legends like Jerry Lee Lewis and Ray Charles, his multimedia tribute, My Baby Grand, celebrates the great rock and roll piano players in his band. The Matt Wilson Band captivates audiences with the blend of soul, R&B, rock, blues, funk, and gospel. In addition to his music, Matt authored Hooks, Lessons on Performance Business and Life from a Working Musician, which I love this book. In fact, I've got
Great
it.
book.
If you're watching,
Boom.
we got the
Right
book.
there.
We got the book and we
Yeah.
read the book. And we did have Matt. Matt actually interviewed us on his podcast, and we talked about several of the hooks and life lessons from the road, and not just musical lessons, but just life lessons
Yeah.
in general. But it's a collection of 80 life lessons drawn from his career. He also hosts the podcast On the Hook, where he explores themes of confidence, performance, and creativity. He currently has a residency in St. Augustine, Florida, the Flamingo Room. Well, we're excited to tell your story, jump into all of the things music. I know you have a family, so we're going to talk about that too. So let's start with the roots. Let's start with where did it all begin for you? And I know I mentioned church, and I know your dad's a pastor. And so kind of get everybody up to speed. We're a little bit more educated than most who may just be introduced to your music right now because we just had the podcast with you. So I heard a lot of great stuff on our interview with or that you had with us. But where did it all start for you? Like, how did you get into music? And I think that's like the question most people always ask. How did you become this great performer? Where did it start for Matt?
I'm from Texas, and I come from a family of preachers. And I say preachers because uh, ministers is a little, maybe, I don't want to say too polished, because I come from preachers that were demonstrative on stage and, you know, a little more vocal, emotional. And let's see, haven't said this in a while, but there was my father. He was a preacher, and his brother was a preacher. My dad still is a preacher, but uh, his brother was a preacher. He My dad's brother had four four sons, and at one time three of them were preachers, right? So
Wow.
whole family, and then their father, my dad and his brother, their father was a preacher. So I come from a very rich church background. And I bring that up because my dad did pastor church as I was all through my life. And so when I was at home, before I moved to college, throughout my whole life, I was on stage in one way or the other. Started off playing the drums in my dad's church, and then I became the worship leader, the song leader
Mm.
at a time. I was the youth pastor in the church for a time. I counted the offering. I mean, I did it all in the church, right? Ran the sound. And so, how that's important, other than just to me, foundationally in my life, uh, from a career standpoint, I've been learning how to be on stage since I was, I don't know, 8 years old, 5 years old, 7 years
Yeah.
old. I
And I
mean,
think a lot of artists do start in church. I see that and I think of and I don't know this to be the case, but like Leon Russell and some of these
mhm.
really, I don't know for sure. I think I remember him being in church at first, but there's a lot of greats who
Well, he's
started in
definitely
church.
got a lot of gospel
Oh, that's
playing.
that's why I bring him up.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
brought it up because
yeah,
I'm sure it came from that. Yeah.
Well, and it's very similar to how I began. I started playing drums in first, and I started playing when I was about 11 or 12 in our youth band at church. And I don't come from a long line of preachers, but I do. We definitely grew up, here in the South with a Southern Baptist church background, and so I was always in music in my church, and I even led music a time or two,
yeah,
and so that was a cool experience for me. And again, that being on stage, uh, presence. That I mean, not that I was a performer by any means, but I was at least not afraid to get up on stage and play some music in front of people. So
right, right. Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, it was training,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For what we were
Hmm.
doing at the time, it was just we were doing what we were doing, but it did turn into a career for sure for all of us.
What
Yeah,
what in my brain, and you said more of that, it sounds to me like it was a bit of a high energy preaching style. And
yeah. I
you
came
know,
from a Pentecostal background.
okay, that's what I was wondering. Yeah.
We were singing Jesus on the main line and
Yeah,
we
I
had
love it.
a backbeat, and we were going.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Pentecostals, they got some music up in their churches.
I
yeah.
love it.
We have a huge church. It's not really a mega church, but it is for
For
Arkansas.
Arkansas, it is.
And it's
Yeah.
a big Pentecostal
Okay.
church. And man, they've had like Lincoln Brewster, and they hire some. I think Joe Bonamassa was there playing guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they got a budget, man. They bring in some cool people.
They make it
But
happen. That's
that
right.
ain't happening in my small Southern Baptist church.
Well, and I hear your
We
accent.
get pocket full of rocks, but
One of my
but
favorite things about talking to you, Matt, is that your accent is so like I can hear like I could almost feel like you could start preaching and I'd be like, yes.
Well,
absolutely.
come on, man. You
You
know,
you definitely have you can tell that you grew up in Texas,
Yeah.
not
yeah.
Florida.
I
I
think
think when I
people's
get
static.
around my southern friends, it comes out a little thicker, and then when
Yeah.
I talk to my
Yeah.
New York friends, I kind of maybe tighten it up a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll
Well,
have to
I think
test
I
it
do
out.
too, but I'm pretty sure it's there. And I just let it hang out because you know what? It is what it
Yeah.
is.
Come on
Um,
now.
s- so
Yeah.
piano, but multiple instruments for you sounds like. And when did the I'm a singing piano brand happen for you? Piano entertainer brand happen? I mean, was that kind of because church or, I know you mentioned college, so I'd love to hear how you went from, growing up in church, doing music, how college happened and the music, all of that in those years of your life.
Well, I think that the piano, uh, uh, and forgive me if I'm not saying this exactly right, but I'm processing this and talking at the same time. It's not always the safe way to go, but we talk about the church. The piano is a foundational instrument in the church,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and so my father played piano, and his sister plays piano, and my aunt Mary became my piano teacher. She was all of our piano teachers, right? So we'd go over there every Tuesday or whatever to the house and get our piano lesson. And so, from a foundational standpoint, piano was the first instrument that I was required to learn. My parents said, "You're going to learn an instrument." So here we go. We're going to learn piano. And that's very important to the story here because it wasn't guitar. It wasn't go to school and pick an instrument in band, that kind of thing. It was
Right.
just we're gonna teach you piano, and here we go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So and then very early on, we moved to a certain house when I was, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 years old, and next door neighbor was Danny, who is my dearest friend. You know, my whole life, I've known him longer than anyone.
Mhm.
Uh, and but his dad was a drummer, and his dad built a studio in his garage. I mean, like kind of like what you have there. And so he set up the drums, and so that's where I gravitated to start to learn to play drums, kind
I
of
see.
thing. And I think that uh, I kind of elevated the drums elevated and took over the piano from a performance standpoint in the beginning, simply because I was just better at it at the time, and I could apply it to the stage. Um, but uh, where the piano vocal, the piano man came about is I mean, it sounds cliche, but Billy Joel was my guy when I was a kid. I mean, I really did love his music. And I remember my mom bought me these giant Tinker Toys. Now, you know what Tinker Toys are.
Oh yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Giant. So like the round thing was as big as your
Hmm.
head.
Oh, okay. I've never
And
seen
yeah,
giant ones.
these were giant, right? And they're plastic. And so I would build them into a drum set, and I would turn on Glass Houses, and I'm just banging away on these things, pretending like I'm Liberty DeVito and
Mhm.
Hmm.
jam. So um, I, Billy Joel, not an idol necessarily, but just I really did love his music, and I was a true fan. He was my superstar growing up, and so here I have this training a little bit to play piano. I love music, and Billy Joel became my favorite. But even at the same time, I would go to bed every night with a little boom box. You know, remember those things?
Oh
Hmm.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I was listening to Jerry Lee Lewis and Ray Charles and just, the oldies, Little Richard. I loved all that stuff. Um, so I fell in love with music, and I had a stage to showcase whatever I thought I could do with my
Mhm.
dad's church.
Sure.
And so again, from a career standpoint, there was just this kind of perfect training ground for me.
Mhm.
So
Well,
that
and so singing for me, piano. So my mom is still a piano player at church at the Southern Baptist Church in Magnet Cove, Arkansas, and I started piano lessons because I saw my mom in church and I wanted piano lessons. So I did a 10-year classical piano training, weekly lessons during the school year, and but then I was always wanting to play in church, but I personally was a little timid and scared to sing and play until I was in my early 20s when I discovered piano bars, and I'm like, I can play piano and I know I can sing all right, but I'm doing this. And so
yeah.
I would say I was not necessarily the singer in church. Did you naturally start singing and playing and doing the vocals in church, or did that happen later for you?
I have an interesting relationship with singing.
Really?
Yeah, it's I at one point, yeah, when I would just sing,
Hmm.
and I had I'm going to speak from a professional standpoint now because looking back, I had really good tone,
Hmm.
but I had no training whatsoever. And so as the expectations began to grow throughout my career, I didn't have the training or the technique to keep up with those expectations. And uh, uh, so back then, yeah, I'd just sit down and play. But I remember I mean, I didn't realize just that this moment would be similar throughout my whole career. I remember I wrote a song, and my dad let me get up on stage and sing it at church. And honestly, it was terrible. I was just nervous, and I it didn't deliver it the way that I wanted to, and I was playing and singing, and so in my mind, I'm like, I'm Billy Joel up here, the church Billy Joel, right? And it just didn't go the way that I wanted it to go. And looking back now, I just realized that I put myself in a position where I wasn't prepared. And
Yeah.
so I began to feel all those emotions of not being prepared. And man, I've actually written a book about not that moment, but
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
being prepared and how to deal with these things on stage and all that.
Hmm.
So from a singing standpoint, I mean, even to this day, I am pursuing the art of singing and learning how to be a better singer.
Yeah, I
So
love that because I think that honestly is more stories than not. It is that way for us. We,
Hmm.
especially when you know, you have an instrument, you start singing and playing an instrument, and unless you had someone who gave you voice lessons, it is an instrument that you have to develop. And I say
mhm.
some of us are blessed with just great tone, great pitch, and naturally are gifted to just open their mouth, start singing, and it's pleasant to hear. Some people not so much, and you have to start training. And I developed issues over the years because I just thought, well, I'll just start singing and figuring it out. And you can't just really do that. You really need to. And I love some of this about your book, and we'll get into your books, the hooks. A lot of them are about being prepared and just, really getting ready for the moment. And I wish I could tell my 22-year-old self, or even earlier in life, get some voice lessons. Voice lessons. I do
Yeah.
still to this day. I take a 30-minute lesson from a fantastic coach in Vegas. She trains a lot of the piano bar performers,
Hmm.
and so she understands the marathon and the athletes that we are vocally with. Sometimes 6 shows a week, 4-hour shows, for a month contract. And I know you know that all too well. That's that vocal stamina is something you have to build over the years. And so,
Mm.
I'm just always interested to hear people's, because my fear when I started, and then eventually what I learned over the course of my career. And I still, it's interesting that you said that you still carry some of that. I mean, do you feel that that moment when you weren't prepared and you got up, and we all kind of have to figure out, find our skin on stage, whether it's in church or starting to perform, because being a good performer doesn't you just don't walk onto stage, and you have to find yourself and grow in that artistry. Um, I I think for me, I've never been super vocally confident. And even though 21 years later, I'm working with a coach and I get compliments on my vocal, I've never thought, oh, I'm a vocalist. I'm a piano player though, because because I had 10 years of lessons and all of that. So, did you
Yeah.
carry any of that now, or where is your confidence? I know this is a vulnerable question, but vocally and piano, do you think through, like, I don't know, where are you with that mindset from I wasn't ready that first time, wrote some book, topics about it, to where you are now?
Well, I'm going to use this opportunity to answer this question with what I believe is some experience and wisdom, if
Sure,
that's okay.
absolutely. I would love that.
So, one of the hooks in the book, this is hook number 26, says, here, I'm going to read it right because I got 80 of these things. Um, your best effort will come from knowing your current state of skill,
Right.
right? And so I I started this. I have all these projects that are out there that eventually someday will turn into something, maybe. And I wrote this performance course called Better Performance to a T, right? And it talks about the uh, how to identify and overcome the three contributors that inhibit performance,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so in this, and all this kind of is still a working project, if you will. But I put together something called the capability ring. So imagine just a circle, right?
Sure.
And in the capability ring, there is at the top of it is ability. And then you go around clockwise and you hit expectations. And then you go around clockwise again and you hit confidence. And then that confidence, you keep going clockwise and it goes back up to ability,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll use an example here. For example, like in the song Rocket Man, right?
Sure.
There's the high G in the second verse where he says Rocket Man and he goes up to the high
Yeah.
G.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I believe I can sing that high G, then my expectations are that I will. So if I believe I can, I have the ability,
Mm-hmm.
then I expect to hit that note. And if
Right.
I do hit that note, then I have confidence
Mm-hmm.
that I'm going to hit that note, right? You see? And so then that confidence affects my ability to hit
Yes.
it. You see what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? All
Sure.
right. But if I expect to hit the note and I don't, well, then what's going to suffer?
You're
My
confident.
my
Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that lack of confidence is going to do what? It's going to affect
Like your ability to perform.
my
Yeah.
ability,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you go back to that story in church when I sat down to play, I didn't understand my state of skill.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I didn't even think about it. I knew I could play and sing, and then maybe at one point, but I didn't think about, are you going to be able to play and sing while everybody's looking at you? Are you going to be able to, were you paying attention to what you were playing and what you were singing? And did you overlook maybe some trouble spots just because you thought you weren't even paying attention, right? So I didn't know my state of skill. And then but I had expectations that I was going to be, like I said, Billy Joel
Right.
in thinking about
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, right? In
Mm-hmm.
that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that moment, when my ability didn't meet my expectations, man, my confidence just tanked.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you find the confidence to get back on stage? Was it just the love of performing or I mean, maybe it wasn't super, the confidence I think is something, and I say find your skin on stage. It takes doing it. It's like on the job training, but obviously did that fuel you to start, working off stage? And I know we talk about preparedness and practice and all of that. I mean, it takes a whole work ethic, and I think work ethic meets passion to continue to grow when those moments happen on stage. For me, I'm addicted to play and I don't care. I will, and it's more about, for me, it's more about the connection with people across the stage that keeps me coming back. But yeah, talk to me about, so when you have those moments, how do you get to the next, instead of letting it affect your confidence, to take it to the next level?
If you hear some of the most highly successful athletes, many of them will say, I I dislike, or they'll maybe use a strong word like hate. I hate losing more than I enjoy winning,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I feel.
Okay.
If I don't meet my expectations, I'm so motivated by competition of being better
Mm-hmm.
that I look under, I look in all the corners, lift up all the rugs. I look anywhere and everywhere of, okay, you didn't meet your expectations. So how can you make yourself better? Right.
Right.
So uh, I never thought to quit. I mean, I wasn't gonna be like, oh man, that was bad. I'm not gonna do that anymore.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
And at that point, I didn't think terribly deeply about it.
Yeah,
Talking about
Mm-hmm.
sure.
that one moment, I
You get it.
just was like, man, that's terrible. Next time I'll do better. But I wasn't
Sure.
motivated to go learn anything. I just thought I was so young, I didn't know.
Yeah.
But now when I have performances that don't meet a standard, and this has been for years, um, I I look at it as an opportunity to learn to get better. And that's what my book is about, is experiencing uh, uh, the highest of the highs and career success, and then also so much disappointment. And then what did I do with that?
Right. Love it. When let's shift over to the Moving Out
Yeah,
show.
yeah. Tell us about moving out and your experience in that and how it kind of affected the future of your career.
Yeah, I love this story because I mean I've done some research on looking at videos and whatnot, but tell us how you got that opportunity and what kind of trajectory that took your career into.
Well, this story is really cool. I mean, it really is. And I
We
think
don't
that,
have to talk about it.
well, no, but what I'm saying is that, again, from a standpoint of for folks listening, if our fellow musicians that are aspiring, or even if they're not, they need a reminder that sometimes just the effort that goes in behind just your career
Yeah.
can
Sure.
pay off. And
Yeah.
so we'll start with there was a concert. We were in Texas, and I was living in Austin, and my family's living in Dallas, and Billy Joel's coming to Dallas to play. This was, I mean, this was forever ago, right? He's coming to do a show there in Reunion Arena in Dallas. And my mom's big Billy Joel fan, my sister big Billy Joel fan. Of course, what told you I am. So we're going to go, right? And so we all got the tickets, and we had floor seats. And uh, we, I don't know if you guys, I know it's kind of well known by now, but Billy will allow the first, say, 10 rows of his shows to come up to the stage. I mean, he's been doing this forever. I assume he's still doing this, but to come up the stage that way, he doesn't feel like he's just sitting there playing,
I've heard that.
sitting there. So people will
I've heard
come up
that.
to the
Yeah.
stage, right? And so this was so many years ago that I don't want to say security was lax, but it's just I found a way to maneuver because I was by myself. I mean, I was with mom and sister, but I found a way to maneuver my way up to get within that area,
Mhm.
right? So I could go up to the stage. And when I did that, I happened to be sitting by someone who was friends with someone who was in the band. And so we start talking, right? And I find out where the band is hanging out after the show. All right, well, I'm going to that, right?
Yeah.
So,
And how old were you? I don't know if you said that.
I mean, I was 20,
Sure. Okay.
I'm trying to remember. That's hard to remember.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, it was after college.
Mhm.
I'm at 23, 24, right?
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, one of the funny things about this, so I go back and I tell my mom, actually, it's not even funny. It's integral to the story as I'm remembering this. I go and tell my mom and say, Mom, I'm going to go. They're hanging out over here. I'm going to go hang out and see who I can talk to, right? Meet. And she gets a CD out of her purse and hands it to me. This was one of my records. And I go, what are you doing? She goes, well, I brought this just in case we wanted to give it to Billy Joel. Right. All right. So I take this CD, right? And I go over to this hotel where they're all hanging out. And I'm just trying to make something happen, you know. I mean, here and everybody in the band is hanging out in the lounge. Billy's not there, but everybody else in the band. And so uh, I approached Crystal Talaferro simply because she was happened to be just there at the bar alone at the moment, you know, and I just no other reason than I recognized her and I'm just starstruck. And so I walk and start talking to her. And I'm telling her, and the coolest thing happened here. Seriously, this is so cool. When she found out that I was a musician and all that, and then I had my CD, thanks, Mom, right there. She literally went up to her room, got her Walkman, because that's how old this thing is.
So was
And
it? Yeah.
yeah, a CD Walkman, came
Yeah.
downstairs, put the CD in, and listened to it right
Wow.
there.
That's pretty
Yeah.
incredible. That
Yeah.
doesn't happen often.
Yes, yes.
I remember giving a CD to some management team of a big artist, and it probably went straight in the trash on their tour
There you
bus.
go. Yeah. I mean, that's where you'd put it, right? I mean, I'm not being
Yeah.
rude, but I mean, you know, not in the
Yeah.
trash, but maybe over there, listen to it at some point, you know.
Right.
So anyway, uh, from there, we developed a friendship, and she agreed to produce some songs of mine.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, this kind of is very foundational as I'm telling this. I haven't told
Sure.
this in a
I
while.
love this. I love
Wait,
this.
so now professionally, I'm just talking professionally. Professionally, I have a world-class producer available and willing to produce my stuff, but I needed some funding. I
Mhm.
didn't have the money to do what we needed to do there, right?
Mhm.
And around that time is I was playing in Austin regularly at Kenny Luna's Ivory Cat Tavern and doing piano bar shows. And this man and his wife, they would come in and see my shows. And I'm not going to go down this other path because there's a whole other thing that's really cool. But they would come in and see my shows. And anyway, I want they became my business partners, if you will, and
Nice.
part of the motivation for them, other than seeing me perform and all this stuff, was that I had Crystal Teleferro on hold here, ready to do some projects, and so they came in as my business partners, and they seeded the project. They gave me some funding to go do this.
Awesome.
So we recorded a few songs. I would go to Nashville. We were working. We recorded a few songs with Crystal, but then along the path, anyway, yeah. So we had this relationship. Well, then Billy came back to Dallas. This was a few years later, and now I'm calling up Crystal, and hey, so we're hanging about stage, and then that's where she said, "Hey, listen, we're having auditions for there's a new show called Moving Out, and we're going to start having auditions for the national tour." And
Nice.
so I had, from that relationship, I had an inside track of knowing that the auditions were going to take place, right? And maybe, I still don't know for certain to this day, maybe I also had an inside track of them saying, "Hey, pay attention to this guy."
Right.
But I still had to go through the audition process, and they had an audition. They had auditions in New York. They had auditions in San Francisco, maybe some in Orlando, and I know that they had some in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So I drove down to do the Houston audition, and I don't think many people showed up, right? But I did what I did, and they videoed, and there I am playing. They asked me to play. They wanted you to play a little bit of Summer Highland Falls. They wanted you to play the intro to Angry Young Man, and I think that they wanted you to do a snippet of Scenes from Italian Restaurant. I think that's what it was. Maybe the middle part, but
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
So I did those things and waited, I mean, and honestly, the way that, and you guys can cut this short anytime you want.
No. I was
Hey, look.
I was looking down. I thought he was going to mute
Yeah.
me because
No, I don't mean that. I'm just, there's so many different paths as I'm telling this.
Well, no, I love it. I think this is super interesting because I immediately was thinking, I wonder what he played and I wonder what they expected. And then, like,
Yeah.
people don't know this side of it. And I've not auditioned for a big show or had the big show like that. So, yeah, continue.
So my manager, the legend in our in my little world, my manager didn't believe I was going to get the gig at all. He was telling my business partner and everybody, "Man ain't getting this thing. This is a national tour. They're looking for the best of the best." And Matt's
Oh,
great.
man, what a manager.
Well, he didn't tell me that.
Oh, okay.
He was telling them that,
Oh,
and
no.
he said we're gonna do everything we can to
Mhm.
prepare Matt, because the worst thing that's going to happen, the worst, is that Matt is going to prepare for this thing and get
Not get it.
better.
Oh, get better. Okay. I love it. Yeah.
That's the worst thing, is he'll get better.
Sure.
He may not get the gig, but he's going to put all this effort into learning this stuff, and then he's going to get better.
Sure.
But he wasn't telling me that. He was
Okay. Yeah.
he was telling me, "Yeah, go get him." But in
Yeah.
his mind,
Sure.
I prepared. We did the audition. Then we waited for a little while, and I didn't know what to think, but we did the audition, and then I get the call back. And so now we're going to New York,
Wow.
and we're going to audition in front of everybody.
Mhm.
The Twyla Tharp, Stuart Molina, who's music director. Tommy Burns is Billy Joel's guitar player. He was his music director for many years. He's not anymore, but he's still in the band. Long Island Hall of Fame guitar player, brilliant.
Mhm.
He's there. I mean, it's everybody. The dancers, everybody's
We
there.
met Richie Canada. We met Richie.
And Liberty DeVito.
Yeah, we got to meet both of those.
Yeah,
in the past. Yeah.
Both those guys are no longer in the band, but they're part
Right.
of they're part of that band, that the classic band, right? That you
Yeah,
would look
sure,
back
sure.
upon. So everybody's there for these auditions, and what's kind of funny is that looking back now, I didn't know at the time, but the other guys that were there auditioning with me, they all eventually, I think all of them eventually played a role. I mean, Darren Holden was there. He was my co-lead on tour. So he got it. And Matthew Friedman was there that day. It wasn't until many years later did he take the role. So here we are. These were the best of the people that auditioned at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're all in there auditioning, and man, that was nerve-wracking. Holy, I mean, it was,
I bet.
but so here's the thing though, is that I did enough in that audition. I didn't do enough where they're like, we're going to give it to you, but I did enough where they're like, man, there's something there. There is something there. And so they sent me, this was maybe June
Hmm.
of whatever year. They sent me home and said, we'll be in touch. And then they called me back like 2 months later and said, we want you to come back for one more audition. And I came back, and this was a solo audition. And so
Hmm.
this was literally me playing the show in front of just Tommy Burns and just Stuart Molina.
Okay.
And after I played it, we sat there and everybody looked around and they go, "You got it."
I
And
love it.
yeah,
I
so
love it.
cool. And so,
Did you feel
uh,
like that was, you kind of had it, they just needed to fit, they had that one last, or what were your nerves going into that third time?
it's hard to, it's hard to, I don't remember.
Sure.
I do remember when it was the audition for when everybody was in there,
Yeah.
the comments of, it was very gentle the way that Stuart Molina said this, but
Mhm.
I was doing scenes from the restaurant and I was just trying to catch my breath. And so I wasn't singing, I wasn't able at the moment to sing full voice. It was very
Mhm.
breathy.
Mhm.
And Stewart said, Matt, that sounds nice, but Billy doesn't sing in that breathy tone. And in my mind, I'm thinking, hey, I have no control. I'm doing my
Yeah.
best just to
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
because if you look at the big thing, I mean, this all ties in, and I write about this in the book, and I talk about ways to overcome these things. But from my perspective, here I am, untrained, I mean, trained by the church. I'm just a rock and roll gospel piano player, and especially no training singing. And Billy Joel's my idol, and here is this. This is the moment of a lifetime.
Right.
Man, that was crushing, right? You ask why they call, why so many times call back, and what I can identify and label it right now as I was inconsistent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Frank Sinatra has this quote, and I won't quote it exactly, but his point is that anybody can do it one night. The
Sure.
pro is the
Hmm.
guy who can do it every night,
Hmm.
right? And that's the thing, is that I did not have consistency. I had moments of like, this is it, this is
Mhm.
wow, and then what, is this the same guy kind of thing? And I think that
Hmm.
that was showing up in the auditions. And then as you fast forward, uh, it showed up through the whole run, my whole run,
Awesome.
my inconsistency, but I had enough of whatever I had to get the gig, and I got it. And this whole process I'm telling you about, but then from then on, I mean, it changed the trajectory of my life.
Right. I love that. And I don't know how often, I say you hadn't told that story in a long time. And I love hearing the making of, like, the true, like, how did it happen for somebody? And, it's the preparedness, it's the willingness, it's a little bit of a luck involved, but like, what do they say? Luck is when, or it's when preparedness meets luck, or what is, I can't, there's a quote, but it's you know, talent meets preparedness, and then
Right.
an opportunity presents itself. But also, what I would love to just, what came to mind was that you had some real, like, some confidence to get out there and go show up. And a lot of people probably wouldn't have been like, I'm going to that after party, I'm going to go shake a hand. How often do we not take the shot? You miss all the shots you don't take.
Right. That was what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Just the inherent risk of, I'm not really supposed to be up there at the front of the stage,
Or
but I'm going to do it anyway. And there's so many people that'd be like, nah, I don't want to get in trouble. I might, just do
or
it.
be scared, or just scared, fear of rejection, or any of the things that somebody might not put themselves out there for. So super cool. So how many shows, once you got the big show, I mean, how many shows did how long did you do that? And and I'd love to ask about your music, your original music. Did that take a back seat? Did you work that into your brand, or did this Moving Out show just kind of become you, and you did that? And how long did you do it, and how often?
Well, I did it. I did the show for 2 years, maybe a little over two
Hmm.
years. You
Okay.
know, it was a tour,
Hmm.
so I moved to New York. A few months after I got the job to train and then do some shows on Broadway. My first show was at Richard Rodgers Theater there on Broadway, Christmas Eve.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's really crazy. I'm here. I am after the show, walking up and down 42nd Street, whatever street that is there,
Mhm.
and all the little flyers. There are many flyers all over the streets of New York
Yeah.
where people dropped it with my name and picture on there,
Love it.
saying Piano Man. Uh, kind of fairy tale stuff. It was pretty cool,
Mhm.
But I was on tour for 2.5 years. We went to every major city, played every major theater,
Mhm.
and uh, yeah, you asked about my songwriting. I mean, I've been a songwriter my whole life,
Mhm.
and I've never given it the center stage, if you will. And there's many reasons to
Mhm.
talk
And
for.
and I brought
Go
that up
ahead.
because we've talked about that in the past. And I feel
Yeah.
like some of the things that I read in your book mentioned this. So I'd love for you to talk about what you did and what you might have gone back and told your younger self to do, or just maybe what you would tell artists right now who are doing cover shows. And I use that loosely. Yours was a very high profile show of other music.
Yeah.
How does one get your music out to the world? I know today's a different industry, right? We consume music. We don't have Walkmans and we don't go to Walmart and buy a $20 CD. So the business model has changed quite a bit for independent artists. I think that's a good thing. We can talk about that later. But just in general, how did your original music kind of did it take a side burner? Would you have done it differently now, looking back? What are those thoughts now?
Well, yeah, it took a side burner for a while as I was
Mhm.
preparing for the show. I mean, that
Sure.
became
Hmm.
encompassing. But there was a moment on the tour where I did record a record. We camped out in San Francisco for a while. We were in San Francisco for a long, I don't know, maybe 2 months or something. This is a long run in San
Hmm.
Francisco. And while I was there, I recorded a record with just this fantastic producer, Scott Matthews, out
Hmm.
there in San Francisco. And so the producers and the Moving Out allowed me to sell my record at the merch table
Awesome.
after. And so Meet the Piano Man, I go out to sign the
Great.
record, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
So cool.
Surprising.
But look, never in my career have I just said, you know what, I'm gonna I'm gonna go do whatever job I need to do to support my original music, because I'm gonna go get on stage and just be a songwriter.
Right.
Um, if and I don't even know if that would work. I have to think that if I were to step out of being the artist and comment on the artist Matt Wilson, a songwriter, I think that I think my songs are good enough, but I don't think that I ever found the right sound. I couldn't, man, it's so hard to take what you do on stage and capture that
Yes.
energy and then put it on a record. And
Hmm.
I never could do that. I don't even know if I'm still able to do that. I've gotten closer as I go along. Um, but money was never a motivating factor, but being a professional musician and working, using my craft as a performer, as a singer, as a piano player, as an entertainer, as a musician, that was my goal.
Yeah.
I did. It wasn't that I don't pass judgment on people that get other jobs and do other things. I mean, come on, we got to make it how we make it. But I've just been fortunate to have the ability to get on stage and make a living.
Yeah.
And so I was going to do that. And if that meant piano bars or cover bands or Broadway shows, right? I mean, and so you notice in I never listed singer-songwriter.
Right.
Mhm.
So And then of course live takes over, so I'm not going to say, you know what, I got this gig in this Broadway show, but I'm going to go be a songwriter. No, you don't say that, right? And then you get home, or you're doing what you're doing, and then eventually you get married and you have kids, and you need to start thinking about making money to provide your
Sure,
family.
sure.
And uh, there's just a better, for most of us who do this, most of us, 99.9% of us,
Right.
there's more opportunity to have a career singing popular music and other people's songs than there is to sing your own.
Right.
And
And
so,
I asked this question specifically because I know you know this about us, and a lot of folks may know, we have a passion for teaching other artists to have,
mhm,
full-time music careers. And I know that's central to a lot of your mission and just why you wrote the book. And I love this that you've got the course, and I would love to talk more about that, maybe even offline, but and even collaborate with you on some of those projects, because I think most so we run ads. We've been running ads to sell some like low ticket set lists to help people get started,
yeah.
play good music that we know, where after 21 years, we know these are the songs. If you go and play them for this crowd, they're gonna sing, they're gonna dance, they're gonna like you, the venue's gonna like you, you're gonna make more money, you're gonna get invited back. You're not gonna be pushing a boulder up the hill by playing some B side song off of an album that you like, but the crowd doesn't like. So we're like,
Mhm,
basically, here's your silver platter of songs that work. And and then of course we've got the Entertainers Academy and all that. Then there's a trajectory that we could take someone if they're willing to go in and start learning and doing like what we've done for And I mean, you can have a really great six-figure career doing cover shows as a musician.
mhm.
And I get so much pushback on these ads of, well, go write your own
Just
music.
hatred.
Hatred. And that's just kind of inherent to people, just, keyboard warriors, right? They want to have an opinion about everything. But
Well, if it's not originals, they'll just be like, I would never play, Brown Eyed Girl.
yeah,
I would,
or Sweet
yeah,
Carolina Wagon Wheel,
it's like I would play music that I like. I was like, I don't think you get it.
so
Well,
I am on a mission to change that mindset. I am so, like, if there's one thing that I am confident about, is that I know it's not necessarily, I like playing Sweet Caroline, Brown Eyed Girl, these songs that I know are going to get, but they're requested. I know they work. What I love about it is the art of performance and getting a crowd engaged, and the song becomes the tool. And so for those of us out there in the music world who have original music and have been writing songs, and I think it can still be synergistic that you build a brand around the show and the connection you have with the crowd, build your audience, and then say, oh, by the way, here's my music. And then it does become a challenge to brand yourself with that. But I would rather do that, make a good living, and be in the music industry than go and have to work a day job to support myself to push my original career. And so I know not everybody feels that way, but I know you've done that. And I just think it's just I mean, you're supporting your family doing music. To me, that's a brilliant thing. What are your thoughts on that? And do you have you experienced that mindset from other musicians? And what are your thoughts on that?
well, of course, and I think that it's misguided. Uh, you have to take a certain perspective, and I'm thinking of this way, and this analogy may fall flat, but okay, we talked about expectations, and then we've talked about consistency,
Hmm.
right? So later after this podcast, you're going to be hungry, and you may go to a restaurant, right? And you may
Hmm.
want a hamburger, so you are expecting a hamburger,
Right.
and you want the restaurant that you go to have the consistency in their professionalism to deliver a hamburger that tastes like a hamburger. I
Right.
mean, that's right.
Right.
And I don't know if you've ever been to a restaurant where you walk away going, man, they tried too hard to reinvent the wheel. They tried to
Right.
do something. It didn't, it didn't have any taste because, whatever. And what I'm saying here is that songs like Brown Eyed Girl or Don't Stop Believing or Mustang Sally, for God's sake, right? I mean,
Yeah.
oh, the main one,
Sure.
from our perspective, oh yeah, music. I mean, it's been played too much and it's cliche and oh, the musicality and it's not, not hip, whatever. but but the audience, they love that. They're not
Yeah.
looking at it from the perspective, oh, it's been played too much. At least
Right.
most of
Most of
them.
them don't.
Most of them want to enjoy music and have a great time. And so then it comes back. So those are the expectations in the room. The expectations are we're watching somebody and we're going to be entertained. Okay, so if so now we carry those expectations. We receive those expectations from the audience. You want me to entertain you? Well, the easiest way for me to entertain you is to play songs that you know,
Right.
right? And so uh, uh, it's not about the art comes in from the ability to deliver the song, to play the song, to sing the
Hmm.
song, to create an entertaining aura and vibe on stage that connects to the audience. That's the artistry in what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Hmm.
The artistry in that moment is not the words that you create or the melodies that you create. Now, there might be a moment, and we all have them. How many times you're in your piano bar show and someone says, play something you wrote?
Right.
Okay, all right, I'll do that. And if they're sincere about that,
Hmm.
then you pick the best song that you can play, and it might do something to them right
Yeah.
then because now their expectation they've allowed you and they've changed the expectations and they've allowed you to have a platform now to share your thoughts and your words, right?
Sure. Hmm.
But look at the opposite of that. You're playing your piano bar show, and now you thrust one of your songs in the middle of that show, and people are like, oh, they're bouncing their head a little bit, but they don't get it. And so
They've
now they
never
start
heard it.
talking to the friend,
Right.
or they go to the bathroom, or they go order a drink, and all of a sudden you lost
Hmm.
their attention. It's not because your song is bad. It's because you're not meeting the expectations in the moment, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And so, not that you're trying to answer these people online, but you're not saying, hey, if you're wanting to be a musician, then the only way to do that is to play these songs. What you're saying is that if you are hired to do a show where the expectation is that you uh, uh, entertain the customers or the audience with popular songs, if that's the expectation and that's the job, then we have a shortcut for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Hmm.
and
And then
I
that
just
way you can meet the expectations. And then if you continue to do it and you do it at high level, then you'll be consistent. And consistency is a mark of a professional.
absolutely. And then why not use that as a synergy? It's not an or, it's an and. It's not
Mhm.
I do this or that. It's I do this and I have music. And then yes, when you have opportunities on stage during your shows, and then you have a fan base that loves you as a performer, and then they want to support your music, then you start, and then today's day and age of social media where you can get little nuggets of your song if you've got a good song. I think it's the greatest master class in hit songwriting to have played all the hits from every genre, every decade. And
Definitely. Yes.
inherently, like you should pick up on what works, and then that should bleed over into your songwriting. I mean, I do also think it becomes an identity crisis to know who you are as an artist when you play everybody's music. That's another thing that happens. But yeah, I love
I
that.
want to give this example real quick because this just
Sure.
happened the other night, and this is
Uh-huh.
for who's listening because I noticed that and to me this was a success in the model that I follow. So I'm doing my piano bar show. These folks were there. There weren't that many people, and here I'm playing all the songs, and I start building rapport, and they're requesting songs and songs, and then finally they said, "Hey, play something you wrote, right?" And so it was kind of funny because I played I picked a song and the guy was digging it, and so he went around everybody. He went around everybody and told everybody in the room, "Hey, this is an original song. This original song."
Yeah.
And I finished it, and everybody clap, clap, clap. And then I kept going and playing. He said, play it something else." And I played another one, and then I did another song. Then I closed the show. It got real sensitive around it. I closed the show with Sunday Morning Coming Down, right? Oh,
Oh
praise
wow,
God,
Yeah,
what a
yeah.
great song.
right? But at the end of the night, the guy came up and he goes, "Man, you're fantastic." And you know what he did?
What?
He bought a hat, and he bought a hat at double the price.
Yeah,
Now, I didn't have music available for sale.
sure.
I didn't have CDs laying around, whatever. I mean, I could tell people go get it. But he bought into my product,
Yes.
right?
Which is
And
branding. Yeah.
Brandon, he bought into it. And I don't mean like I tricked him or nothing. It's just what I was selling, the entire thing. My songs, my entertainment, my
Yep.
willingness to connect with him and deliver and do just I'm there being an entertainer for his evening. And that happened. And then he wanted something to take away from the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
I'd
model. Am I right? That is the model.
and I'd probably say like most of the time when people get our CD, they I'd say less than half of them actually go home and listen to that
That's
CD. It's
probably,
more out of support
I don't think
because
I feel like nobody does, but
no, no,
I
no,
feel
there
like
are
they might listen to it on, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe,
there are some people that
yeah.
I mean I still have a CD player in my truck. I mean it's a
Yeah.
2016 truck and it still has a
Yeah.
CD player. Some cars don't anymore, but I've even had 70-year-old told me you should get flash drives and sell those because I listen to flash drives in
They
my
go
car.
in their truck. I'm like,
Yeah, but
Right.
it's like all right, duly noted. But yeah, it's so much of that support on of what you're doing in your product of entertaining and performing, and they just like you and what you're doing, and they just want to support it. So same with him. He double the price of the hat. I just want to support you and what you're
Just want
doing.
to support. Right, right. And so whether it's cover songs that have been curated, and this is the perfect thing to play, whether it's songs that original music, whether it's merchandise, or whether it's just they keep coming out to your show to support you, that is I believe is the current business model
absolutely.
for,
Absolutely.
for the most attainable current business model. I mean, sure, there's some out there that are still rising above everything with a great song or something, but there's not a path that can be taught for that.
Mm-mm.
Don't you
Mhm.
agree? If
I,
I could teach you how to become a professional musician, a working musician, but if you say, well, how do I write a hit song and get on the radio? Nobody knows.
no,
Nobody.
well, a lot of it, I start saying, go find write something that's create viral content because we're content creators now. And then it gets the earworm of your song gets stuck in so many people's ears that they start following you. And if you're smart, then you monetize that on your own. And then labels are literally shopping. I think they're getting kind of learning some lessons that if you just find a viral person and sign them, they don't have, can they back it up with longevity? Do they have a show? I mean, they're probably scared to death to hit a stage with thousands of people in front of them. So it's like, to me, that I think with there's a lot of boxes that I think you can try and check, but I'm like, just do what you love for a living. It's the fastest and best way to make money in the music industry right now. Cover shows. There are venues in your local market right now that have budgets that need entertainers to come in there and keep people coming in, drinking and buying their food.
Well,
And
but just like what he said on writing hit songs, I mean, be a cover band that plays all of those top 40 hits and you'll learn how to write
Learn how to
yeah,
write a
a
song. Right.
song that's worth something. I mean, it's a crash course on every hit song of every decade that you could imagine. So, I mean, I think it's really influenced what we do and what I do as a writer when I write. I'm not really just writing for myself anymore, as much as I am trying to actually write a song that people will enjoy listening to, you know?
catchy hooks, catchy lyrics.
I think a good. I think I wish someone would write a book, and just interview as many famous artists as they could, and say, okay, name their song. Like for example, "Let It Be," and you're asking Paul McCartney, what's the one song that inspired you to write
Ooh, yeah,
Mhm.
"Let
that's
It
a
Be"?
good idea. Yeah,
Right? Because we're all stealing from each other, right?
yeah,
Yep.
And
absolutely.
so like because I could think of some of my songs and know exactly the song that I
Hmm.
heard and go, man, I want to write something like that.
Yep.
Right.
Right.
Hmm.
So you're right. To learn to be a good songwriter, learn to play other people's music, study it. Yes.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Well, let's switch over into your, what did you're about
Oh,
to say
I
something?
was I was gonna do the same thing. I was just talking about we were talking about branding and Matt Wilson. So you've opened your own entertainment academy or not a company in your name. So what prompted you to start Matt Wilson Entertainment?
Well, this goes back to the partnership that I formed with Eddie Karam, Eddie and Rhonda Karam. Those were
Mhm.
the folks that I talked about earlier that would come to
Sure.
my shows, and we formed a business. And so we formed a partnership, an LLC, and Matt Wilson Entertainment. And at the time, it was just centered around my performances. But over the course of my career, uh, everything I do follows or falls underneath that umbrella, if you will. So
So,
my
and that's
book,
the business side. Yeah.
that's the business. I book rooms, I produce shows that I play, uh, do some consulting here and there. I've written the book. I release music when I do, and anything I do falls underneath Matt Wilson Entertainment.
Mhm.
We did Big Red Dog Productions. Big Red Dog came from Cliff being called Big and Clifford
There
the
you
Red.
go.
He's not even Clifford, it's Clifton. But
Yeah.
we decided to LLC Big Red Dog Production. So yeah, and I think that's also you back to the success in the music industry. You have to learn to be a small business and an entrepreneur, and
Mm-hmm.
part of that becomes knowing how to do the business side, which most end up doing maybe an LLC, but small business for sure. So on the Hooks book, let's talk about Hooks. And then I want to go into where you're performing and where folks can come and see your show now. But the Hooks book, when we were on your podcast, we picked like three or four. I ended up giving you like eight or nine. But um, on the Hooks book, what inspired you to write this? And I know now that people have heard your story and just kind of listened to the things that we've talked about, you're passionate about principles and philosophies. But what what inspired you to do the book? And I talked to you about maybe wanting to write a book as well. So I would love your advice on that, but just in general, the book, kind of give everybody an intro to the book and what they could find if they purchase it, which they can find it on Amazon.
Yes, yeah, they can. It hooks lessons on performance, business, and life from a working musician for those
Right.
that are.
Hmm.
Uh, so I, as wonderful as Moving Out was, it was also there was a lot of disappointment and a lot of struggle with because it was that consistency thing. Um, we talk about the audition uh, being stressful. Well, now you put me on stage leading this show that's Billy Joel and Twyla Tharp, legendary, world famous. I mean, everybody's big, but the super big people, I mean,
Mhm.
they're they're the biggest, right? Um, and multi-million-dollar a week show tour, and there I am when I'm leading, I'm the only voice you hear in the room, and
Mhm.
there's thousands of people out there, and there's all the dancers and all the stuff, and just truthfully, I did not have the mental ability to handle that pressure consistently.
Yeah. And I think a lot
And
of that a lot of people probably wouldn't, you know,
well, yes, yeah, I didn't. I
it's a
mean,
lot.
I
Yeah.
just did. I didn't, and but it just like the story when I was a teenager and singing that little song I wrote in Dad's church, I never quit. I never looked at an opportunity to quit. I looked at an opportunity to, it's the cliche thing, right? The thriving and surviving. We hear it all the time. But um, people ask the question in these motivational talks, do you want to thrive or do you want to survive? But I think that maybe what sometimes is missed, they look at it as surviving as a negative thing. But if you're choosing to survive in a moment when that's all that you have, you could choose not to, right?
Hmm.
So surviving is still a positive choice. And I don't mean it in like life and death situation, because if you're struggling with something professionally and you're not thriving, but you choose to survive, that's still not choosing to quit.
Correct.
Mhm.
Right. So I stayed on board. I mean, there were, and I'm not trying to make this sound bigger than it was, but it's just the truth. There were times on stage when I was just trying to not fall off the stool. I mean, I was scared. I
Yeah.
was scared. I didn't know how the note was going to come out, and I was afraid. I just there was so much pressure, right? And so And I can talk a lot about that, but I'm not going to use that platform or this platform right now to talk about that. But what I will say is that years later, in my time after the show, I began to, I studied about how to uh, uh, overcome these fears on stage, overcome these things. And so I started writing a seminar about how to focus under pressure.
Mhm.
And I was just working on this, and man, I had a keynote, and I mean, it was all going right.
Hmm.
And then I don't know, life happens, and it's just set on a hard drive somewhere, and I didn't do anything with it, but I did a lot of work toward it.
Mhm.
Um, so I was involved with a piano bar near Austin at the time, and that relationship ended. And I talk about it in the book. I mean, I was fired from it. Uh, I don't like saying that, but there were reasons. I was having vocal issues at the time,
Mhm.
and I was, I'm not making excuses, but the owner, we just the thing ended,
It
right?
happens. Yeah.
It happens. And I was booking the room, and I was the main guy and all that, and it changed. Uh, from a piano bar standpoint too, they kind of wanted me to do some of the shows that I didn't want to do. So there's a lot of things involved. But anyway, in that moment, this is so crazy. In that moment where I was transitioning out of that into something else. So it was like a May, June of whatever year this was. Man, there was just this day and a half of overwhelming inspiration. And I got out my phone and I started writing down these hooks. And at the time they weren't called hooks. That later,
Hmm.
but for those that don't know about the book, which is probably everybody, I have 80 hooks. They're little statements, and you read the statement, and I've read one already, so that's like that statement, and you could take it for what it is and think about it on yourself, and then you turn the page, and then I write about what that statement means. And so I mean, I still have the original file right here, and at the time, I called it uh, proverbs, not proverbs, but proverbs. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because those that know in the book of in the Bible, proverbs are similar things. They're scriptures, but they're little thoughts.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was going to call it proverbs, but then I realized people would get it. They wouldn't get the thing,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
So, but anyway, I don't know, 110 of these things fell out of my brain in a matter of like 2 days. And I just accepted it. I was like, just typing as fast
Sure.
as I could. And it had everything to do with everything I learned in the business, everything I learned how to do on performance, everything I learned to do about, uh, 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 you know, staying emotionally connected and centered, songwriting, creating. I mean, anything I could think of. And yeah, that's where the book started. And I think some of it had to do with the fact that it goes back to that motivation from being competitive. And I wanted to tell my story. I wanted to say, okay, so here, I mean, by no means could I ever think ever that my time in Moving Out was not successful. I did 2 years as a lead of the most popular Broadway show at the time, probably singing the songs of my idol, meeting the most talented people in the country, and performing with them, dancers and singers and musicians. Most importantly, I met to be what became my wife, mother of my children, who she was a dancer from the show.
Oh,
I mean,
wow. Yeah.
you cannot paint a negative brush of my time, really, if you want to think about it. But if you start to evaluate it just from a career standpoint, I wasn't able to capitalize on that opportunity from a long-term perspective because I was inconsistent with my performances. Um, and I was inconsistent personally. The weight of the show made me a
Mhm.
wreck off stage at times, and it's just a
Mhm.
lot of struggle. And so um, I wasn't able to use those couple of years of my life to springboard into maybe some things that I could have later, right?
Mhm.
at least the obvious ones, like, oh, he did Moving Out and he killed it, and everybody's cheering him on the way out the door, and now let's give him a record deal and let's
Yeah,
put him
yeah.
on tour with Billy John. None of that stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
I left the show with the mark of being inconsistent
Yeah.
professionally, and so man, that'll make it, that stings.
Hmm.
I mean, it still stings this day in some sense, right? Because you talked about, if you could look back to who you were many years ago and say, hey, do
Right.
this, I still want to go, man, Matt, go read your book.
Well,
You
that's
know?
what that's what I know in the book when in reading the
Yeah.
book. It's like you say that, and it's like these are the things I wish I could tell my younger self. Like
Yes.
whoever you are out there, you can learn something if you're have had a career, but also please go read the book because it's got
Right.
such
Right.
wisdom.
So the motivation came from, I just needed to get this out. I needed to say it, but at the same time, and I think that it does come from coming from a family of preachers, right?
Sure, comes back to the
I
roots.
look, I was talk a little believer of faith stuff here. I believe that God has given me a desire to be helpful,
Sure.
right? And
Hmm.
so, um, you know, earned or not, I've always had a lot of confidence. Now, there's moments that I'm insecure about some things, but I've always had just a lot of confidence. And especially before I even knew what I should be confident or not confident in, man, I had a ton of confidence,
Hmm.
even as a child. And so, because of that, I've always felt like, okay, how can I say this? I would rather you give me your pain and let me deal with it than me watch you go through your pain. Because I believe that I can withstand it and come out on the other end. And I'm not always sure. When I say you, I'm just talking in general.
Sure, sure.
I'm not always sure that you can. So I don't want you to hurt.
Hmm.
Right?
Well,
And
that's a
so
God thing too, and that I think that's
I
probably your.
believe
I
that.
think.
I really believe that, especially when I see people that are really putting in the effort and really
Mhm.
trying and really, so I would rather, I kind of like, let me take your place because I think I can handle this,
Mhm.
and you don't have to feel that.
Mhm.
Even though we all know that feeling and going through the struggle
Mhm.
is part of the growth here. But to that point, I thought, well, okay, if I can have these terribly painful moments on stage as a performer, but I can come out on the other side and come up with some strategies and tips to avoid that or to have some different perspective, well, then I'm going to tell people about that.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so that's where the book and the ideas started to come from. But then they're all not that deep and heavy. Some of them just like, there's Lydia Hook that says, don't order food on break. And I talk
Yeah.
about why you shouldn't do it. And then I make it more broad about,
Sure.
use as an analogy, but so that's where it came from. And I believe that the book uh, will live forever. Meaning, I mean, I'm working on the stuff, but I mean, it's not like you put out music and it's hip for the moment, and then maybe it becomes dated.
Or even
I'm
an educational book that's rooted in what's happening right now. And we know
right.
things change. I mean, the latest platform, if I teach you how to be viral on Instagram or Facebook, well, we don't know what's going to be in 5 years. This to me is timeless. Like it's principle based. There's going to be some that are somewhat rooted in time, but I think in general, it's just a great principles of
Yeah,
life.
some of the analogies might be rooted in where we are because
Correct.
technology changed,
Mhm.
but the principles, as you say, I believe
Mhm.
most of them. In fact, as I was preparing to come talk to you, and I started looking through it, and I was like, man, I need to read this more because it just reminds me of the lessons that I've learned and how I can continue to apply them. You
Mhm.
know,
Mm.
so
I think you should. I think my brain goes to social media and like it would be cool if on your socials you could share. We've been doing like a song of the week highlight, and we highlight
right,
the song and the making of the song or whatever. But you could do a hook a week, and
Mm.
then you've got
yeah,
80 weeks of here's the hook, and then you could apply it you can talk about it in a high level of what it is in the book, but then you could also maybe bring up that something current that you've been dealing with. And that would be something that I would definitely tune in to watch that, because they would remind me and would give me a little teaser on the book and then be like, yeah, go get the book kind of thing.
You know, man, if my short answer is yes, I do do that, you know, but honestly, I think if you don't mind, and we don't have to get sidetracked here, but
No, go ahead.
I wrote a hook. You know, I'm still writing these things, right?
Yeah.
And so this is not final form, but it goes to what you're talking about. I literally wrote this as I was signing into this because I was thinking,
Oh, wow.
uh, motivation thrives on a platform. Find your stage,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about, and you're telling me that, and my thought is, yes, I need to do that. But I found that when the book first came out a couple of years ago, and I was really doing a lot of promotion on it,
Mm-hmm.
man, what a beatdown social media is. My
Oh, I know.
goodness, you put so much effort into these posts, and then 8 people like it, and it floats away in the wind like you're blowing on a cotton
You
thing.
cut, yeah, yeah. What are those called?
Dandelion.
It's
Dandel.
like, man, I spent all day, and
Yeah.
there it is, and I'm not making excuses, right? I mean,
No, I
consistency is,
think no, what you're saying, yeah, consistency is key, but I would say,
yeah,
yeah, organically, they say maybe 10% on a good day sees your what you
right.
post.
Yeah, who's seeing it?
10%. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's tough.
man.
Yeah.
And so honestly, we talk about it, but I was thinking about um, the motivation that man. Okay, so I have to say this because I was
Yeah, no, so motivation,
yeah. Well, there's
what
one
was
of my
it about the
hooks.
platform, right? You said,
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that there was another thing that drew me into this is that there's hook number 52 in the book. This is talking about fear and talking about staying focused, and the hook is a wrestled thought grows stronger, right?
mm-hmm.
Now, the reason I wrote that hook is because when you're on stage or you're at home or whatever, and a thought comes in your mind that is negative, right? If you just allow it to float and go in this ear and literally float out the other
Like a
the best you
passing
can,
cloud. Isn't that
pass the
nice?
cloud, and you don't ruminate on it and don't think about it, it will lose its strength, and it will, I mean, depending what the thought is, it may not go away completely.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's an ongoing problem, you may have to keep thinking about it. But certainly while you're performing, let's take it there. You're on stage. If you just let it go away, it will go away. If you wrestle with it and why did I do that? And what is going on? And why did that happen? Or if you wrestle with it, it's going to grow stronger. Right.
Right.
So that's why I wrote the hook. But then I thought about today, that hook just changed completely a different meaning to a positive meaning for me. Because I don't know if you suffer from this, but I do. Everything in social media, all of our outlets, all of our things that we do, they're attacking our ability to focus. You
Absolutely.
can't just pause for a minute and really focus on something, right? And so I
Mhm.
started thinking, wow, if I say a wrestled thought grows stronger, and if I don't want it to grow stronger, I don't need to wrestle with it. But the positive side could be true. If I want it to grow stronger, I should wrestle with it. I should really choose to think about it. I should
Mhm.
really get in there. And because as I was preparing this, I was thinking, I'm going to have to tell stories from my past, and I'm going to have to talk about the book, and I'm going to have to talk about this stuff. And I found my mind just wanting to bounce and go read Twitter, go check your email. Go. And I said,
Mhm.
no, I need to stay. And then it dawned on me, wrestle with these thoughts and they will grow stronger, right? So there's a positive
Mhm.
side of that. And then I started thinking about, well, how can I apply? Because then I'm start turning to the writer. How can I turn this into a broader scope? And the idea of motivation came to me.
Mhm.
I'm motivated to want to be a good guest on your podcast. So I'm going to be motivated to stay in the moment and really think about these things that I've written in the past and talk about my book and think about
Mhm.
my history. I'm motivated to wrestle with those thoughts and really
Sure.
find the best path. right? And so, where does motivation come from? And then it realized many times motivation comes from having a platform, right?
Sure.
Somewhere to share what you do.
Hmm.
And so then it comes down to find your platform. And that brings me to what excites me about meeting you two is that not only you're giving me a platform here and I'm grateful. Thank you. But
Yeah, and thank you for ours as
I
well.
see so much potential for other opportunities of having a platform to share these things that we're thinking and talking about.
Hmm.
And then that gives me motivation to wrestle with these thoughts. You see how it all comes
Mhm.
Sure,
together?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway,
I think we have platform and to bring this full circle back to the artist, the musicianship, the career, the business, everything is that we do have as independent artists the ability to have platforms now, whereas 20 plus years ago, you did not, you really needed financial backing and someone to help you get onto the platforms. And back then it was what, radio, TV, some PR
stage.
shows. Now
Yeah.
we've got a platform, which now that the flip side is we've got ADD and we've got all these triggers that are designed to keep us not, scroll, scroll, scroll and don't focus. However, we do have the power in our hands now to release books, have a platform now to go and distribute it and market
Mhm.
it ourselves and learn resources like courses. I'm a serial learner. I will go and learn. I'll take any next course that I need to learn because I'm like, yep, don't know that. I'll take that too, to a
There you go.
fault. Now I got a little,
Yeah.
I need to focus. But there's so much now on platforms that we can get our message, our whatever we feel and God gave us as our gift or our mission, our legacy that we want to leave. The platforms are there. And speaking on the musician side, now we have platforms and venues where we can book ourselves and we can make a business out of the platform being sharing our skill on stages in your local or and international markets. So that could take several different terms on the platform side.
Yeah.
But to me,
Yeah.
I was hearing we've got a platform that
Yeah. That's
that
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's not just a stage. It's
Hmm.
it's whatever. Find your platform that motivates you,
Love it.
Mhm.
right?
Love it.
'Cause a platform will provide motivation. And to that point, if you're able, if you have the skill to create posts that people like, I mean, that's a skill. Let's be honest with it, right? I
Hmm.
mean,
Mhm.
that you can put stuff up there that people will respond to. Then you're going to be motivated to continue to do that.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not the only motivator out there, but it's a big one.
Sure,
So
Mhm.
sure. Well, we encourage everybody to get lessons on performance, business, and life from a working musician. This it's called Hooks. It's yellow. I've got it right in my hand. If you're watching, we do release our video version of the podcast, so you can see our faces. But if you are
all right,
listening, definitely check the links below. I'll have a link to Hooks. You also have a podcast. I'll drop the link to the podcast because I know you had many guests in the past that were centered
yeah,
around. And when
Mhm.
you interviewed, like you interviewed us, you can go check out
hmm
our interview with you. We talk about you give your guests an assignment to, check out the book and pick out a hook and pick out several
yeah,
hooks. And then we talked about what those hooks meant to us. And I think that's a super cool way to integrate your book and everything in your mission to your guests on your podcast. So y'all check out the podcast links. Let's talk about what's keeping you busy. I know we didn't talk too much about your family, but I know you said your wife was a dancer. How long have y'all been married and how many kids and where are you now and where are you performing? So I know all that's a
yeah.
big,
Right, yeah.
like where can you hear Matt Wilson perform and tell us about your family a little bit before we get.
Sarah and I married 15 years now, and two boys.
Oh, how old are
One
they?
one is 12 and one of them's 9.
Are they doing music? Are they
Oh yeah,
jumping?
yeah,
Okay, yeah.
they're involved in the sports and the music and the stuff,
Okay,
and
awesome.
so I mean it's just it's wonderful, and as I say, don't blink because it goes by so fast,
Sure, sure.
Um, my wife Sarah's in she was a professional dancer for many years, and then she
Mhm.
retired and got into the event business and hospitality business, and now
Nice,
she's a
Mhm.
general manager of a hotel, and
awesome.
and so we've been kind of following her. We were in Texas for a long time in Austin there, and
Hmm.
then she was uh, given an opportunity in New Orleans, so we moved to New Orleans, and then we were there a few years, and then of course she was given an opportunity here in Jacksonville, Florida, and so that's where we've been for the last few years. I have been, up and down Florida, performing in different places, but we're coming close to a year now that we've been open. I started booking and performing at a room, Cortese's. That's what we're going to go with now until I'm corrected. The Flamingo Room or Cortese's, which is the only dedicated piano bar in Jacksonville.
Wow.
Jacksonville, if it's not the largest, it is like top 2, 3 largest cities by like mileage and square, however we say this, landmass, if you will.
Radius. Yeah.
Yeah. In the country. And so there's not a piano bar here. I mean, when I was in Austin, there was 4 on one street.
Yeah,
right?
I know. Yeah.
And
then New Orleans, you got them down
New
there.
New Orleans is a piano town. So anyway, we at the Flamingo Room, and it's actually in St. Augustine, which so greater Jacksonville area, but in St. Augustine, the Flamingo Room, we do have a piano show 7 nights a week, and I'm there at least 3 nights a week, and it's my home base, and that's where you can find me these days.
And is that dueling or solo piano show?
Solo. It's just solo piano.
Yeah, which I love solo piano. Dueling pianos are great, and I still do. I do probably 5 or 10% of my year is in a dueling. Actually, maybe less than that now with Cliff. But so then I find Cliff and I add him in as a guitar player next to me in the solo piano bar format, which I love the solo piano bar experience. And so I encourage anybody wherever you're listening in the world, find a piano bar. Just type in piano bar in your city. Find a piano bar and go experience the magic of what a performer like Matt, a good skilled performer like Matt, will play all your music and create these moments for hours. And it's
a journey.
It's a journey. You'll hear music and love, but most importantly, you will engage and start singing and probably dancing and doing things you never thought you would because of music and being in this close, intimate experience, all just centered around a piano. I was told. Yeah. We're just, we just happen to be able to sing and play a piano, but the concept is there's a piano in the corner and we're all in a living room just having a good time throwing a party.
Absolutely.
And I love that. And well, thank you so much for being here today, sharing your story. And like I said, y'all go and check the links below. But for those who are just listening, where can everyone find your website, your social media?
Yeah, MattWilsonBand.com. Instagram is Wilson Tunes. Facebook is Matt Wilson Band. Lately, most of what you'll see is just my performance schedule for the week, but you never know what will pop up. Of course, the book is on Amazon. You can find Matt Wilson Band on Spotify and Apple Music. There's still
awesome.
I have some of my records up there. Certainly MattWilsonBand.com will lead you to wherever you need to go.
And would you be available for corporate events? Because I bet your show, your road show is killer. I would love to, y'all keep it invited.
I'm available for wherever you need me to be available for. I think.
I love it. I love it. Well, I hope to meet your wife and beautiful children one day. And
we gotta bring this together in person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm extremely grateful that you had me on today.
Well,
I look forward to whatever comes next.
I just love your energy, and thanks for having us on your podcast. Y'all can check that link below as well.
Oh yeah, you got to you got to listen to that too.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Matt. We will see you soon. I'll be talking to you soon because there's so much I'd love to collaborate on.
Yes.
Y'all check out his book, Hooks. If you're in the Jacksonville, Florida area, please go check out his show, but definitely go visit his links online. And we will see y'all on the next podcast.
Yeah, thank y'all for listening. This has been Cliff and Susan on the Cliff and Susan podcast with Matt Wilson. We will see you. I don't know who our next guest will be, or maybe we'll just be on our own. I don't know.
We never know where it goes. And when cool opportunities like interviewing someone like Matt come along, we will be on with you the next time. It could be next week. It could be a month or two from now. We don't know. That's the fun thing about a podcast like this. Thank you, guys. We will We will see you soon, hopefully in a venue near you. Otherwise, check us out online, cliffandsusan.live.